Hey there. Right, so I knew when this made me feel like I had to get out of bed for it, that it was something that I really feel passionate about. And so I should do it for sure. And then I was thinking, well, why do I feel so passionate about this? Because I'm like a know-it-all. I don't know. Anyways, there's this person that I follow that I subscribe to on YouTube. And he doesn't have a lot of followers, but he talks about spiritual topics. I can relate, right? I've never commented or had a conversation with him or anything, but he had a post on the community tab of his page tonight. And I sort of fundamentally disagree. Not really disagree because it's his perspective, right? But I can see how his perspective is a little bit tangled. And I just so wanted to comment and straighten it out for him. But he didn't invite me, so I can't. So instead, I'm inspired to just share this perspective because, in actuality, this is somewhere I've been tangled before as well. And so I know he'll get there. Like he doesn't need me to tell him. He is on a journey. He talks about his spiritual journey, so I know he'll get there. But meanwhile, I can share, since I'm inspired by him reminding me that I used to be tangled in this way as well, that here's some insight I've gained on my journey. And I'm going to base it on something he said, which is that he says, all the time I hear the same stuff. Why is the spiritual awakening so difficult? Does it ever end? What's the point? I'm probably the loudest complainer, honestly, he says about himself. But all a spiritual awakening really is, upon reflection, is the elimination of parts of yourself you no longer need in order to just be yourself. And he says, for example, I like to judge, maybe less than I used to, but still, it's there. I'm not a huge fan of this side of myself, the opinions and energy spent caring about others. It's dawned on me, though, I don't need to be a person who judges so much. That's not really me. I can drop it. Now, it may not come with any profound changes immediately, but just the awareness that when you're yourself, you actually don't need very much. Enough as it is, judging others is just judging yourself. It's a key statement I'm going to tie into in a moment. And he wraps it up with a little bit of a joke, which is probably why I like his channel, because he does joke a bit. And he says, of course, if you're wearing Crocs in public, you deserve the judgment, naturally. So he gives himself permission to judge there, which is just cute. I don't feel that strongly about people wearing Crocs or not. But what I do feel strongly about is the idea that a spiritual awakening is the elimination of parts of yourself you no longer need. It's just, and then he goes, has that statement below that says, judging others is just judging yourself. Okay, so here's the thing. Judging others is judging yourself because we're all one, we're all connected, and we see others through the lens of our perception of them. And so all we can see in the other is something that we have inside us. So it's true, judging others is judging ourselves. But then he's saying to eliminate that. So that thing that I judge in another, I would, if I would eliminate it, trying to find that exact words. eliminate it as part of myself's no longer need in order to just be myself. Here's the thing. In actuality, what we are doing, it's like say he decides to just stop judging. And so what he's going to do is just accept instead, right? And that's fine, right? And acceptance isn't elimination, though. He's talking about eliminating, so he's cutting something out. And have you ever heard the Carl Jung quote, which is actually a partial quote, but it's what you resist persists. So whenever you're trying to push something away, you're in resistance to it. If you're trying to eliminate something from yourself, you're in resistance to it. And everything is energy. So ideally, what you're going to do is actually integrate it. Just like I talk about in my newest series where we feel our feelings, we are integrating the feeling. And integration means that we become the version of ourselves that can handle that can be with that doesn't judge that doesn't push that away, that is an acceptance of that knows how to handle that. So if we instead try to eliminate this thing that we decide that we don't want to do anymore, all we are doing is here's this current of energy, right? And we're like, no. And this energy is here. Like, you can't destroy energy, okay? You cannot destroy energy. All you're doing by resisting it is kind of pressurizing the situation, right? Because this energy is still there. You are resisting it. And that can also take a lot of your energy, your time, your focus. So he's kind of saying like it's a waste of time for him to judge others. And sure, it absolutely can be looked at that way, and I understand his perspective when he says that. So if I don't want to judge others, here's what I do. I accept the part of me that has been in judgment. I love myself, even though I have been in judgment. And I become the version of myself who can understand why I've been in judgment, because I've acknowledged it in myself, I've validated it in myself, I've accepted it in myself, and I've been present with any of the feelings that I have about that. Like, oh, I'm so ashamed because I've been judging people, or oh, I'm so stupid because I've been wasting my time judging people. Things like that. Like, just make sure that I can process through any of these emotions. And now what I've done is I've integrated judgment. And here's what will happen. When I see someone judging, I'm not going to judge them for it. I'm not going to have a strong emotional charge about it at all. Which, if I don't integrate judgment, I may have a very strong aversion to it. I may start being uncomfortable around other people doing it, even though I've adapted my behavior to not include that. I'll start seeing it a lot outside of myself because now I've disallowed myself to see it within myself. And we're all one. So the only thing I could possibly do by eliminating it is seeing it outside of myself now. So in actuality, the spiritual journey, the spiritual, what does he call it? Spiritual awakening, why is it so difficult? In actuality, does it ever end? What's the point? It probably doesn't ever end because it's just about expanding your awareness. And expansion is a limitless process. When it comes to us on Earth and just energy in general. And what's the point is, you have to make the point your own, I would think. And kind of what I've focused on and made the point is just to know myself, because I want to be here on Earth and express myself, not what I was programmed to do or what I was told not to do, or, I don't want all that kind of clutter influencing just like me, my energy to come through and create here and just like be part of this. Because once you figure out how all the energy works and free yourself of the limitations that allow you to be the conscious creator here, and contribute to the world at large, even if it's a small ripple that you're putting into the pool. It's amazing, right? Why wouldn't you take that opportunity? That's exciting. Isn't that exciting? And maybe it's not exciting, and it's okay if it's not exciting to you, because, if you're in fear of survival right now, like if you're like just trying to think about how to survive every day, it probably isn't exciting to think about that, because it probably doesn't even seem possible. So all that means is you may be much earlier on in the spiritual journey, and you might be at the point where you're kind of needing to clear up some backlog of stuff you haven't processed yet. And when I say processed, I mean integrated. I mean, become the version of yourself who can handle that, who can process that through, who can understand and like digest the perspective that you were in, and the experience that you had, and the emotions and feelings that you felt. It's like your experience, and you're supposed to like integrate it, digest it. It's part of why you were here. It's like you were dropped in here to earth and given certain energies to experience with and through, and that's what you've got. And you chose this perspective and these energies so that you would be inspired to something that you do want to create, that you do want to contribute and expand into. Because that's the opportunity here, when you get to that space where you're free of all those limitations and judgments and, programs and stuff like that. So my feeling was just like, I wanted to caution him, but I wouldn't have worded it that way. I wanted to give him an example of how integration might be more appropriate. And I held back from doing it because I don't feel the opening there energetically. But I do think that he is someone who could grasp that very easily. He just might not be there in that moment that he's typing this, right? And that's okay. I'm not judging him. I don't feel very strongly about, him getting it wrong. I just feel excited for this opportunity to kind of expand on his thoughts and idea about it, because isn't it funny how on the one hand we can be saying, if I judge others, I'm only judging myself, but then we can say, let's cut this part out of me. Even though there's plenty of other people who have that part too. And if they're part of you, then you have to integrate what you see. You have to integrate what you know yourself to be. It has to be part of you. It's part of you. And basically that's what we're doing, is like integrating the unloved parts, integrating the parts that we have disowned, loving ourselves through the experiences that we may not have preferred to have, but have had. And it's a challenge sometimes. It's a big challenge sometimes, but it's what expands your awareness. So if you want to choose to act differently, like if you integrate your judgment, and then what you're doing is expanding your awareness around that topic, meaning, okay, now I accept that there are people who judge and there are people who choose not to judge. It's just two sides of that energy. And now that I can see that, I make a choice of where I want to express that energy. It's like, I'm going to choose not to judge. Okay. And it's really easy, because now you're not going to just see everywhere you look people judging, because you might see them, you might not. And it's not a thing, because there's no emotional charge within your body about that, right? Like, you're not averted to it. You don't dislike the part of you that judged, because you've already acknowledged, validated, accepted, and loved that part of you. So other people can judge, and it ain't a thing. And you can choose not to judge, and it's very easy to do. You can adapt your behavior because it's no longer a coping mechanism. It's no longer an automatic response. It's something you've chosen. And that's the freedom you gain by integrating these things that hold us in loops of energy, patterns. We eventually notice the pattern, and that's what allows us to engage in that formula of untangling the energy. So I suggest integrating everything you see, everything. And I mean everything, dark stuff. If you can't, do it all, it's not meant to be done in a day. This is a life's work, right? And if there's a really difficult thing, save it for a day you've got some time, or, you're in a comfortable, safe spot, or you're in the bathtub or whatever. Do what's right for you. I'm not saying you've got to do, snap your fingers and accept everything and everyone and be all love and light. I'm just saying, when you feel averted to something, think about it, integrating it instead of trying to eliminate it. Because once you integrate it, you can eliminate it from your behaviors. Because you have acknowledged it, validated why you had it, or why you judged it, accepted it, like that's where you're at, or this is where I'm at. It exists there in the world. And then been present with your feelings about it, or loved yourself through that experience. A whole different ballgame. Your awareness expands, and you are no longer like a victim to that energy happening in the world. So whatever it may be, and I'm talking, even dark stuff, you can integrate it into you by recognizing, your humanity, and just being, okay, I acknowledge that I have a really harsh judgment against people who do this particular thing, this dark thing that I don't like. It's like, okay, validate why you have that. Well, I think it's really wrong. It's really harmful to other people, so on and so forth. It's like, okay, you have validated yourself on why you feel really, really averted to that and really judgmental of those who do that. And then you accept that that's where you're at. You've understood why you feel the way you feel. And now what do you feel? Be present with those feelings. It's like, well, I feel anger and hate, and I feel powerless, and I feel scared, and I feel like there's something that should be done about it, all these kind of things. And you be present with those feelings. And then if, you have a chance to see that, however dark somebody else's behavior is, there is a reason for it. And a lot of those darker behaviors where people are acting in ways that are harmful to themselves and others do stem from them having been abused themselves. But when you're in judgment, you don't really see the other side of the coin, because there's two sides to this energy. So even though you don't like it, once you've accepted it, you can move past that into compassion. And you can find the humanity, like this is a human being who was severely traumatized and abused, and they chose to go this dark route. And maybe that's really sad for you, and you don't like it, but you understand it. So that means you've integrated it into you. You understand it. You understand it in terms of it's an acceptable thing for you to do, but you accept that it is happening, or it has happened. These darker ones are really hard. And I think that a lot of people would go to those examples as a way to try to discredit the practice. And that's why I use a darker example as my example, to show what I mean when I say, to integrate everything, even the darker stuff. I'm not saying become that behavior that you don't like. I'm not saying that at all. I hope I made that clear. I'm just saying become the version of yourself who, first of all, acknowledges your judgment, understands why you judge it, accepts that you have the judgment, because judgment is a heavy burden for you to carry. Energetically, it lowers your vibration. You will not be a match to all the things that you desire sometimes because of holding judgments. So you're looking for acceptance and then being present with how you feel about it. So integrate it. That's your integration of it. And then you can move up to this higher vibration of compassion for whatever it may be. So, yeah, integrate, integrate, integrate. I know that I came across that from a spiritual teacher years and years ago, but I can't like name one. I think it was just like a culmination of things I was learning, Like a lot of what I do it's just like I'm too rebellious to try to just copycat anyone. I just take a little bit from that and a little bit from this and get inspired to experiment. And whenever I understood the concept of, everything is a reflection of me, of course it makes sense to take that in as my own, as me, not push it away. And I'm not saying to stay subject to things that violate you or, to not leave a situation where somebody's really angry and in your face. I'm not saying any of that. I'm looking for patterns of behavior. That's the things that I'm referring to. Patterns of behavior. Because when you are in a dangerous situation, your body is going to tell you, but it depends on how attuned to your body and listening to you, the cues it gives you on whether you listen or not. So these are two separate things. An immediate danger that you should be paying attention to based on how you feel. That is something for you to act on. And if it means remove yourself, absolutely. It doesn't mean stay there and integrate. Later, when you're safe, maybe you can integrate any judgments you find that come up about people in that experience, but maybe you don't have any. I'm just specifically talking about when we are looking to no longer continue in a pattern of behavior or thought or feeling. That instead of thinking about eliminating that we integrate it instead. And then our awareness expands to include a wider view, which makes us understand that everything that's true, the opposite is also true. That's two sides of one energy. And then we can choose very easily, because we're in the neutral space, how we want to behave. If we're already behaving a certain way because it's programmed into us as a belief or a coping mechanism or something in our subconscious or unconscious that we are not aware of, and then we go, oh, I'm going to act that way instead, right? And we're trying to get from that way we've been doing it to this other way. I'm not saying you can't do it that way, but you'll notice there's a lot of repetition. It's harder. It takes your will. It takes everything. And like, have you ever tried to quit something and know how hard it is? Because if you are working against energy, because you're trying to pull yourself from one extreme to another, that anchor that you haven't released yourself with, which by not doing the formula that I talked about, is making it harder for you to go to the other side that you want to go to. And for instance, when you're eliminating addictions and things like that, like integrate, instead of just trying to go in the opposite direction. And I don't mean fully indulge yourself in your addiction until you feel like it's part of you. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying do the formula on that. Get yourself into the neutral space. So then when you decide to change your behavior, it's based on a neutral space, and then it's much easier to go in the direction you prefer. What you've done is restored your choice, which essentially means that you've earned your freedom. So this is how you become free. You integrate to become free. I think that's what I'm going to call this video. All right, we'll make this one short. What do you think? Do you have any questions based on what I'm saying? And I'm not saying that his perspective is wrong. I want to reiterate that, just because it's okay to not have the perspective that I have at any point in your journey. Like, like I said earlier on, I could have been tangled in that kind of same place, not really quite seeing the biggest picture, knowing that I didn't want to be a judgmental person, but also not understanding fully what I had to do to make that happen healthily. And I do understand, so now I'm just sharing that. Okay. But share what you think, and share any questions that you might have or insights that you have that might even be bigger than what I'm sharing. I'd love that. Love that. Let's have inspired conversation. I welcome it. Okay. Other than that, I will see you next time.